Hey everyone, this is Kevin Kerner, and you're listening to Tech Marketing Rewired, a show where I talk to marketing leaders who are rethinking how growth really happens in tech. In this episode, I sat down with Dennis Behrman, who's the CMO at Agility Recovery, and we unpacked something every marketer wrestles with, attribution. We've got all these tools and all the data like Salesforce and UTMs and dashboards galore, and somehow you're still asking, where did this deal actually come from? Dennis has been in that room more times than he can count. We talked about why attribution often feels more like guesswork than science, why last touch might be the only thing that really matters, and how he's using GPT agents and stacking them to generate leads from real world events like weather and power outages. It's one of those conversations that makes you stop and rethink how much of your data is actually useful. So I'm really excited about this one. Let's get into it. This is Tech Marketing Rewired. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tech Marketing Rewired. I'm your host, Kevin Kerner, and I'm really excited to have a good friend with me today, Dennis Behrman. Dennis, great for you to join us.
Great. Thanks for having me, Kevin. Good to talk to you.
Yeah. Super psyched. Anytime I get a chance to talk to you is a good thing. Why don't we do, before we get into stuff, I know we're going to talk today a lot about, your experience in, I guess, marketing measurement, which is a big topic a lot of people are interested in right now. But why don't you go ahead and give us a quick overview of your background, because it's impressive.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. Started my career in banking. Kind of came out when Y2K was a thing. So, cut my teeth on some systems work for a couple of years. I went on to become a product manager at a bunch of software companies and spent some good time with product managers and engineers and kind of just learning how to do that job. And that brought me to marketing kind of accidentally about midway through my career. So for the past, I guess, 15 years or so, I've just been doing a lot of different marketing experiences, primarily at private equity-backed software startups and primarily B2B marketing.
Yeah, interesting. And now you're CMO at actually a really interesting company, Agility Recovery, which is an industry that I have not worked in before.
Yeah, it's a first for me too. But
Yeah.
it's so funny too. You spend long enough in software and you live that life where there's seven alternatives to your product, and it's just a game about saying we're the best at it because. And now I'm in a business where there is no peer, right? These are kind of real world problems. So the big case study for us was last year when the hurricanes kind of whipped through the Carolinas. That was a disaster situation. Businesses were knocked out, power, connectivity, everything, buildings flooding. And Agility Recovery was able to get in there and get businesses back up and running, in a matter of days and sometimes even hours. So it's real world stuff, right? It's real world business services, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be working.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's for those of you who don't know, it's I call it disaster recovery services. So it's kind of part technology, part service. And what a mission, though. I mean, you show up when people need you. And I guess even like from a marketing perspective, you got to show up when you got to have them know you. Like you got to be on the list for this type of stuff. Or when they're searching, you got to show up, right? Because people may not look for disaster recovery until it happens, right?
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, awareness is the first ingredient to marketing success, right? They have to know that something like this is out there, and our product fits the bill, right? There's just not a lot of business owners that would know how to connect a 2 kilowatt generator to a building to provide backup power. So
You'd hope they wouldn't have to. A lot of them are like, I hope I don't ever have to do this.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's a critical service, and the fact that we can offer it on a membership basis, so you don't have to worry about managing all those assets and all that overhead is that's the real value add.
Well, the thing I wanted to talk to you about today was more on the measurement side. I think what's super interesting about your background from a measurement perspective is you've been at, all different types of owned companies, public, private equity. You've had to probably defend the marketing position a lot. And of course, that's how you measure has changed a ton over the last, let's say 10 years. So you have this perspective. I thought one of the things I know we wanted to dig into was attribution and sort of that whole topic of how do you track the success of any marketing channel or sales channel. And there might be some people listening that don't really have the experience you have in attribution. So could you just define from your perspective, just maybe broadly marketing measurement and then marketing attribution And then we'll get into some of the challenges that you're seeing now as how it's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not an academic at this. I'm a hack, right? I had to learn
Yeah.
this on the job. But yeah, the golden rule is in marketing is you have to be able to measure it to manage it. So over the years, as digital marketing and the internet has exploded, there's just been this proliferation of tools, data analysis techniques, and methods that marketing and businesses have used to figure out, hey, how are we getting this business? How are we filling our funnel? Where are these leads coming from? And what marketing activities did we do to get these leads and generate this pipeline? So, marketing measurement turned into a science, called attribution. And attribution sounds like a very scientific term, but the reason that I kind of pitched being on your podcast is because I felt over the years I got this nagging suspicion that it's actually not as scientific as people think it is. I do think it's technology driven and I think it's data driven. But even recently, I was in a discussion with my executive team here at Agility about where did this deal come from? We have all this data, tons and tons of data and records in the database and leads and events. And yet we still had to have a discussion about where we thought this deal came from.
Hmm.
So it was a very contradictory type of conclusion I had, which is, all of this data, all these tools, all this technology, and yet we're still having individual human conversations about where did this deal come from.
Yeah.
It does seem a little bit odd, and I thought that would be a great topic for your podcast.
That's crazy. Yeah. Because you would think with all the propaganda around, oh, these tools are so easy and they can track everything. It's really not. It's really much more complex. Break down for me why you think it's particularly challenging in B2B. Well, let's just talk about B2B because that's the world we're in. Why is it particularly challenging now in 2025?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that's going out there is, the notion of the buyer journey. I think probably everyone who listens to your podcast and has had a career in marketing has dug in and spent some time in the buyer journey. And that mission is trying to figure out the individual steps that a buyer takes on that path from awareness, being convinced and being sold and converting into a lead and converting into a book of business. And I think as marketers, we've been taught and almost indoctrinated by our vendors, our technology vendors, to say, you have to track every single event that happens to that lead along the way to becoming a lead. And that starts with anonymous activity in your website, right? Before they even fill out a form and give you an email address and give you a name, they're on your website and they've been cookied and they're an anonymous visitor with anonymous sessions. And we're tracking all those clicks all the way. And then at the very end of it, they do something. The visitor on your website does something, fills out a form, becomes a lead, and maybe becomes a customer. And now you have revenue. And now we start asking ourselves the question, how did we get this revenue? So then we do this big look back, right? We look back at tons and tons of data and tons of clicks and tons of events on our website. And we start playing the chip trading game. Oh, well, that click on that asset was influential. And oh, they downloaded that checklist. And therefore that contributed to. And I think those are largely internal discussions. I have this nagging suspicion that if you were to go back and actually, most of these leads probably don't remember everything they did on your website over the period of months or perhaps even years. But I suspect, I have this nagging suspicion that if we were looking at truth rather than just data, we would realize that a lot of this activity on our websites is random, arbitrary, and not terribly influential at all.
Hmm.
And I do suspect that it can be different for every website visitor, but typically it's one thing or one or two recent things that causes a person to convert into a lead and ultimately seek your products and services.
Who's asking the question of attribution in your experience? Like I'm sure it's executive team sales, but what's the catalyst for the question and that question? Like where did this come from? Where are you going to defend it?
Yeah. So there are several there are several partners and peers around the business who have interest in this stuff. So you mentioned sales. So certainly your sellers want to know what activities you're doing that's leading to these things becoming leads, and they're asking for a couple of interesting reasons. Number one, they obviously want to know what piqued the lead's interest? Like what are the topics? What's the what's the value prop? What's resonating? What should they emulate when they get in touch with that lead? And that's great. The other thing is sometimes sales has their own biases about what the value prop is, what works, what message resonates with leads in our target markets. So sometimes they actually want to disprove the activities that you're doing in marketing and say, no, don't do that. Do this instead, and that will generate more. So sales is one contingent. Certainly, executive leadership and boards, right? A lot of marketing. I think in the last 4 roles that I've been in, marketing is either the largest or the second largest cost center of the business, right? So these companies, these investors, and these owners and executive teams are dumping tons and tons of resources into marketing, and they rightfully want to know, like, what's working, what's not working. Should we do this? Should we stop doing that? So, that contingency, the exec team, your board, your ownership, they're the ones who are putting their necks on the line, and they're shelling out a lot of money to generate this business and this growth. And they have a right to understand what's working, what's not working. Why do we do this? Why didn't we do that? How do I evaluate trade-offs in a constraint-driven world? So certainly there's that. And then thirdly, you have marketers themselves, right? And Kevin, I don't know if you've ever felt yourself in this type of a situation, but we have to justify our own existence somehow, right? We have to prove to the world that we are valuable. We do have merit. We deserve our seat at the table to determine what goes on in the marketing program. Those are the 3 big constituencies when it comes to marketing attribution discussions, and their own objectives and goals and biases and prejudices kind of infect a lot of these discussions along the way. I swear to goodness, if I've had it at one shop, I've had it at a dozen. It doesn't change.
Totally. You know what was super interesting in what you just said is like you would think attribution. I mean, I know you got to do the defense thing, and even as a marketer, you have these constituencies. But what was interesting is it didn't sound like to you that it was overly helpful to actually figure out what was working, or maybe truthfully what is working. And maybe you just didn't say that, but when you look at it internally, like in the marketing department, is it helpful at all? And in what ways is it helpful? Or maybe it's just at the point where like it's really not that helpful anymore. It's more of a feel or a guess if you took all the external factors out of it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I wish there was a technology out there that could identify signal versus noise in the
Yeah,
behavior, right? Because
right.
sometimes I feel that we're only 10% of it is true signal, and 90% of that data is a lot of noise. So wouldn't it be great if you had a filter, on your analytics package that said filter out the noise? So yeah, if inspiring entrepreneurs out there, tech entrepreneurs, come up with a noise filter platform, and I'll be your pilot customer.
Yeah. That's crazy because there's a whole industry built around attribution, like like there's platforms, it's inside of platforms, and now there's AI stuff that's going on to try to figure it out. And as a CMO, like a tenured CMO has been in a bunch of places. It's super interesting to hear what I hear you saying is like, I don't know if we can trust this stuff. I don't know if it's actually useful data. If you had to pull out a usefulness in it, is there any data that's particularly useful coming out of it? And if so, what do you find most useful?
Certainly the last activity before they convert to a lead, right? I mean, almost always that's for me the most reliable thing. And if I was to tell any marketer what to do and what activities to invest in, it's invest in the ones that are directly generating leads. You know, and I do think that, like, if there's something to be appreciated about the difference between B2B marketing and B2C marketing, right? If you're Nike, or Walmart, or Amazon, I mean, B2C is a different world because you want to know what colors of widgets they're interested in so that you can put that color of a widget offer in front of them for their next product. Like all of that attribution data and past data that exists in B2C, I think is far more useful than that stuff would be in a B2B world. So, for me, I think like the answer is always the simplest one or the most elegant one, which is go with what you know, not a hunch, not what you suspect, what you can actually see and prove. right? And that's, for example, this most recent QBR that we were in that involved me going through all of our several hundred inbound MQLs for the quarter and looking at all the click history. And when I look at it, just, with a perfectly honest, truthful perspective, not seeking an agenda, almost always I can just look at the last activity before conversion. What did they show up at the site for? Where did they fill out the form? What did the page say? That's what worked. It's really that simple.
Are you running MTA now, though? Do you have the ability to run
We
multi-touch?
are, yeah. So we have an interesting situation where we're a 35-year-old business, right? So our business was started as a division of GE, 35 years ago, and and has morphed and adapted and changed over those 3 decades. So a lot of this attribution information has been built up over the past few years. And now I feel like it's a lot of data debt and technical debt that needs to be paid off in order to kind of just see a get a very clear view of the signal. So yeah, we're doing, we have multi-touch attribution. Salesforce has multi-touch attribution models baked in. Interestingly enough, I saw that we're using both first touch and last touch together. You can have both models active in Salesforce, and I guess Salesforce will tell you what worked. But that was another thing that leading up to me reaching out to you about this episode, I thought was very interesting. It's like, so now we're letting Salesforce tell us where our deals came from. And I suppose that's great if you understand why Salesforce is making the determination that it is. But if you don't, you probably struggle to explain some of this stuff sometimes to your partners around the business.
What about the effect of brand, just overarching brand, on the ability for someone to be interested in you and then to 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 get to click on something that comes to you? Can't really measure that as easy, can you? I mean, what's your perspective as a CMO on the importance of brand? And that's might be something that you really can't measure as directly.
Yeah. Interesting question. So, gosh, I guess I'm going to confess to being a rogue or renegade marketer, but I've always sought out opportunities where you didn't need a brand to be successful in marketing, right? I again, coming back to, I was a product manager early in the days. Just where my heart is I want to win on the strength of our product. I want to win on the strength of our value prop, and I don't want to win on how far and wide we can spend to get the brand out there. And then, coupled with that, I think a lot of fellow marketers are out there, probably a lot of the people as well, are in niche, in niche verticals, right? Where you're targeting very, very discrete segments of the market, right? You're targeting specific functions of the business, HR or finance. You're targeting specific roles in that, a risk and compliance person or a facilities ops person, right? So you don't need this massive household brand, right, to be successful in those spaces, and that's liberating to me. I actually
Yes.
find that to be very liberating. I'm an organizer and a tinkerer by nature, so I like, simplicity is my nirvana.
Love it.
And I want to eliminate as many factors to success as possible. I don't want to have to incorporate a new factor and a new factor and a new factor all the time. I think that kind of leads to just madness, right? And I want to be, I'm already an energetic guy. I want to be calm at work.
Okay, I know you are about ready to redo some of the properties there since you're CMO and have taken a look at sort of under the hood of everything. With the website being one of them, how does this measurement discussion affect how you approach web, especially the web rebuild or redesign or remessaging? Does it affect it at
Yeah,
all? Affect your thinking?
yeah, it does in a couple of very interesting ways too. I think one of the first ways, and we were chatting about this in the warm up session to the shoot here, is I'm a privacy guy, so I love privacy minded solutions as much as anyone. But I think if you were to take a poll of global website users, I think universally everyone would conclude that that whole GDPR cookie banner, accept all cookies thing is just the biggest pain in the butt in the whole world. I don't know anyone that likes that thing. right?
I
And
agree.
we're all surfing the web every day, and I think like every one of us is annoyed by it. I don't think anyone thinks that's worth the privacy trade-off or even understands, frankly, what the privacy trade-off is. So, how it affects measurement and analytics is, there's an opportunity to deploy privacy-minded analytics. Google's going to hate me for this. Google Analytics is not privacy-minded analytics. It's the opposite of privacy-minded analytics. And if you use Google Analytics on your site, you have to, and you do any sort of business in the EU, you have to do that GDPR privacy or cookie disclosure. So I think, one of the exciting things that we get to do here is we get to figure out how to be a little bit more user friendly, right? A little bit more privacy friendly while still getting the basic, normal, effective marketing attribution and analytics that we expect and that we need to do our jobs. So that's one interesting thing that I get to play around with as part of the site work that we're doing. I think the second thing is, this is still very much a niche business that I'm in. So, in terms of re-architecting our message and how we position the solutions and position the products to the world, I think there's an opportunity to do so smartly, right? In a very smart, kind of common sense, human oriented way, and not let us do this endless hand wringing about should we say this or that, how about this, how about that, right? I think this is a good chance to just get down to basics, back to basics, and say very, very matter of factly, you know, what is this business about? What do we do for our customers? What is the value of being a member of Agility? What do you get when you become a member of Agility? And just that plain spoken value prop. You don't have to be super sophisticated, use 50-cent words all over your website. Just tell them what you do, tell them why you're in it, tell them why you do it. So I'm excited about this thing because, again, I love the whole back to basics, right? Just let's get back to signal and try to eliminate all that noise.
Your comment about the cookie thing is so dead on. I hate this debate. I wonder if anyone even looks at the dumb thing when you hit the accept or reject. What I try to do is I try to figure out which one I can go like what can I click the button on faster? Do I do this one or this one? It doesn't matter to me. But I'm probably the edge case from a privacy perspective. Do you know if there's do you know what the workaround is to that? Uh, of I didn't know it was tied to GA either. I know we have to build it into our Google Tag Manager.
Yeah.
But are
Well,
there workarounds of not having the cookie
okay.
policy
So,
or simpler?
not a lawyer, right? Not an attorney. I did use ChatGPT this morning, but apparently the explicit cookie banner is a GDPR requirement that affects EU and anyone who is within the scope of EU. So that can be people who are French citizens living in the US, for example, right? The scope is just massive. I think everyone remembers when GDPR was rolled out, how much, how big of a
Oh,
deal that
a
was.
lot of companies made a lot of money off it too,
Yeah,
GDPR.
but I think number one, Agility Recovery doesn't have a book of business in Europe. We
Hmm.
we don't deliver our services there. So that's kind of what started me on, can I just figure out a way to not get around, but just to not be in scope for GDPR in the first place. So I think figure out where your scope, where your coverage and your scope of GDPR lies, and you're probably onto something if you don't seek to get business in Europe. Is
Yeah.
That's the starting point. And then the second thing that I learned in this journey is that a lot of those behavioral analytics that are in scope for GDPR are, is what Google's using. So Google, GA is taking, that's what's considered sharing. When you take traffic data from your website and you hand it over to GA, that's considered data sharing. That's in scope for that regulation. So the question I then ask myself is, do I need GA? And sure enough, there's actually analytics packages out there that are either local side hosted analytics packages that are single session, right? They don't capture all of those non-essential cookies that's so prevalent in the Google Analytics platform. So caution everyone, like ask the questions you need to ask, right? Like bring in your experts. But, I think there is a way forward where if you just, if you want basic analytics that do the trick, that tell you what's working and what's not working on on your website, and you can figure out your scope and exposure to some of these things and do it easily, I think you're in a big, you're in a big kind of de-scoping mode of your tech, and you can shed all of this data and tech debt that we have. We've all joined places where you fire up Google Tag Manager, and there's 50 or 70 tags set up on your website, and I don't think many people know what they even do, right? So that's an argument for just slimming everything down, just focusing on what you need, and eliminating everything that you don't.
That's fascinating. It never even entered into my brain not to have Tag Manager. That's why that's why who you are and who I am, because you would be the guy knowing you to say, I wonder if we need this thing. I wonder if there's something else. That's so awesome. I am seeing two camps of like tech overhead. It's like either everyone wants to have the single platform. They're looking for the single platform that solves everything. They get a HubSpot route and they do everything through HubSpot. Or you're seeing all these micro solutions, little solutions that talk to each other, really easy. And I don't know which one's simpler. I mean, I think there's a case to be made that going one stack, easy, consolidated stack is easy, but then you lose that on the functionality. There's another case to make that if you're keeping your options open with a bunch of different platforms, smaller platforms, let's say, more agile stuff, you're not as beholden to any of the technology providers. It's really an interesting time.
Yeah, and I've used both. In my last two roles, I've done both of these approaches. One was single stack on HubSpot, which I loved. I think HubSpot does a great job as a single stack, right? It's easy, it's intuitive, it's reliable, it works. But then you come into a shop that isn't a HubSpot shop, and rather than do a big HubSpot deployment, you sit there and you look at your tool set and you say, what do I need to do? And if you have a contrarian mindset, right? If you just think of, well, what's the other way? What's the other option? And you just keep asking those questions, and you keep finding answers that says, okay, this is actually possible. This is exciting. I can do my job with about 25% of the tech stack I thought I needed to be able to do. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, you're the best at that too. You're the
Thank you.
master of being like, what? Why do we need to do it this way? And you just go whoop off there and usually make it work. Before I let you go, I'm curious because you're a CMO and I'm interested to ask this question. What do you think of what's been the benefit of AI in your marketing effort there at Agility? Just give me your general thoughts on how you're using it with the good and the bad. What do you think?
Yeah, AI. I tell everyone that AI changed our jobs overnight, right? So beyond the obvious, which is using AI to kind of like do a lot of your writing, right? It's a large language model, so it's great at writing words. Where I've been using it recently, and where we're getting to with Agility, is using a more agentic AI approach for lead gen. So we're building a series of AI GPTs or bots that are going out and doing some website scraping and finding external kind of like macro events and deducing which potential businesses would be exposed to those events, and then targeting those businesses based on that conclusion. So for example, there's a number of websites out there that track weather related activity. Some of them are commercial, some of them are open sourced. But if you know that a 5 mile radius around a particular town's flooding happened, and you can pull that data in by using a GPT web scraper tool. And then you can cross reference that with your database, external data, business data, and so on. You're actually in a position to go to affected targets in the market and say, hey, we understand that you just had some catastrophic flooding in your area. Whether or not your business was disrupted isn't now the time you should look into business continuity tools. Or another thing is, popular thing is, hey, it looks like over the past 12 months, the area that your business is located in has had a grand total of 27 hours of power outages over the past year. That's extremely effective information if you're targeting businesses to offer them backup power on demand. So these GPTs are starting to talk to each other, right? One GPT's job is to go find the weather events out in the world. Another is to associate them with businesses, look those businesses up. And yet a third is to look at that business, the affected business, and what business they're in, look at the event that happened out in the world, and craft an ideal pitch and say, here's a pitch because there's just a lot of power outages in your area. Here's a pitch because there was, a hurricane risk, and you're in a FEMA flood zone, and and you're in for example, a pharmaceutical storage business where you can't have more than 25 minutes at a time of power outage. So that kind of use of AI, and particularly an agentic approach, building purpose specific GPTs and having them actually talk to each other in order to generate the outcome, is truly fascinating stuff. I hope every marketer is looking into this stuff, and the tools are prolific, right? Don't need to mention any of the names, but there's just tons of tools out there. So dig in, go for it. It's exciting stuff. It's going to make your job a lot easier.
Yeah, the whole GPT stacking idea is so cool. I mean, that's so. I mean, we do it, but I'd never really connected the way you connected it, and that the data platform that you talk about. Like, I used to work at Hart Hanks, and we had all these really complex. Epsilon does this too. Really complex models that would look at weather, and then if there was a weather event, they would go to Home Depot and say these stores need to show, the umbrella ads or whatever the product was. Now you can just do it by just a GPT. That's unbelievable. Really good
Yeah,
use case. That's crazy.
impressive stuff.
Okay, so I want to take you through. This has been awesome. I want to take you through a little thing we do here on Tech Marketing Weird. This is going to be a little scary for you, but I'm gonna. So I go into Perplexity. I ask it. I tell it, hey, here I want to do an AI roulette question with my next podcast guest. I want it to be unexpected and provocative for him at the end of the podcast based on his experience. And then I'll load in your LinkedIn profile. So I'm going to hit send here and let's see what it gives me. Okay. Just based on your LinkedIn profile. Here's a provocative, unexpected question. If you could implant a single unfiltered AI generated thought into the mind of every executive in your industry, what would it be, and what chaos or transformation do you think it would unleash? I guess you can pick your industry. Is it in the marketing industry? Is it in the disaster recovery industry? That's an
Yeah.
interesting one.
So I have to inject a
Yeah.
thought into
Yeah. Every
like
executive in your industry. And what would you
uh,
hope what chaos or transformation do you think it would unleash?
well, I'm going to take the easy way out because I've said this before. I think AI is accelerating this, but I think marketers are endangered species. And I would honestly say, like, if a marketer comes to you and says they have the answers, don't trust it. We don't have the answers. We're searching for the truth just like everyone else. And I think the temptation is that having a lot of data and having a lot of data analytics means that you know the truth. I don't think it does. So yeah, and for that reason, marketers are an endangered species. We will not exist in this life form in another 10 or
That's a really good insight because if it is our industry, you would want to put that in people's minds now because, what type of chaos is it going to unleash if you don't? Like, think about all the stuff. And I totally agree with you. I think Jacob Bank was on one of the podcasts so far, and he had a really good way of putting the perfect marketer in the future, at least for the foreseeable future, where we wanted people to have a real tools first mentality. Like they were like thinking, if I'm a marketer, and you're really good at this, like you're this strangely, I don't know, maybe because we have all this context and background, we're like this, but it's someone who, if you give them a problem or solution, the first thing they think about is is there a tool that can solve this? And with agents and AI and all this technology and stuff getting easier and more accessible, I think that's where things are headed. We need those type of people in marketing, more of those type of people.
totally agree. Yeah, if there's got to be a tool to solve it. And I think what that means for us as a species, Kevin, like, doesn't that mean that we're going to become more operators of technology? And it's really about the tool selection. So our success will be about the tool selection and not necessarily our understanding of the market or our mastery of the subject matter. Right? It's really just it's going to be about are we good operators of the tools? I feel
Yeah,
like.
and have a good knowledge set of them such that we can build a community around, how do you harness this stuff, which be
Absolutely.
awesome. And you would be awesome in that community because you're a person I go to when I'm trying to broaden my perspective on this stuff. So it's awesome. Well,
Well,
Dennis,
I'm honored, but yeah,
I
but
really
don't
appreciate.
oversell me. All right.
No, you're great. So I wanted people to get a hold of you. How would they get a hold of Agility or you? What's the best way to contact you if they want to talk more about this stuff?
Agilityrecovery.com, great website, and also on LinkedIn. We love LinkedIn, sharing great information there. Me personally, also on LinkedIn, Dennis Behrman, easy to find. And if you ever need to email me, it's just dennis@dennisbehrman.com.
Love it. Dennis, thank you so much. I was so glad you reached out to me and we'll do this again as you get more provocative ideas in that head of yours.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. And I'll be your guy for anything controversial. I love the
Of
controversial
course, of
topics.
course. Okay, man. We'll see you.
See ya. Take care.